So the moderator of the panel, Philip Gerbert, is also a very special person. He was running, let's say, the AI cluster globally at BCG for some years before. Thank you. Before, just shortly, you decided to work with TU Munich here in Munich, the venture labs, and to have some impact, yeah, to create some significance. And I think the panel that you will moderate is also about like sovereignty, AI technologies, and I would like to ask not yet the speaker or the speaker. I guess you will introduce them.
Yes,
yeah,
I will.
To then come also to the stage, please.
Cool. Perhaps if I have one request for the moderation, it would be great to get a fifth chair. I'm happy to stand otherwise, but that would be fantastic. So thank you very much for the kind introduction. So I would like to ask on stage Nicole Büttner, please. Exactly. Nicole is the founder and CEO of AI solutions from Merantix, Momentum, and also a member of the management board of Merantix. And if I may say so, also the human face of AI in Germany, right? Then Tim Gottheit, Vice President of Technology and Innovation at Infineon, also a big expert on automotive that we've done. Nathan Benesch, I haven't seen you, Nathan. Oh, here you are, please. Nathan is, the general partner at Air Street Capital, but most of you know him as a co-author jointly with Ian Hogers of the annual State of AI report, which is, a must-read for everybody here. And last but not least, Qizu Wang. Qizu? I haven't seen Qizu yet. Oh, here you are. So Qizu, apologies. Yeah, hiding behind me. So he's head of future projects at Helsing, an AI defense and democracy company that is, I think not everybody might know, but he'll tell you immediately a lot about it, right? So I thought I'd take good care of my speaker, so I brought you some water so you survive the session, right? I mean, I think that's the first thing we have to do as a nice moderator. Everyone. So. The panel is, about values, growth, and sovereignty, the case of European AI. Obviously, a very important topic and dear to all of our hearts. I think here Jonas already, did a lot of things by starting a company in this. But I would now perhaps quickly ask people, the panelists to introduce themselves a little bit in their company and what they're doing, and perhaps from the State of AI report, perhaps Nathan, you could start, with a brief introduction from yourself and what the state is doing.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everybody. So my day job is investing in machine learning-based software and biotech companies in Europe and the United States. My side project is writing this report every year, which is a really cool opportunity to interact with lots of entrepreneurs and big tech companies, policymakers, and researchers to try and assemble a digestible understanding of what's going on in the last 12 months. So we're actually going to start writing this report in the next 3 months. So we'll have properly detailed thoughts in October again, which you can access for free online. But a few of the major things that I think we really saw in the last 12 months or so is one that machine learning is kind of making its way into very high stakes environments. We had some really neat examples in the UK of some of these transformer models that are sort of similar in concept to what Jonas presented, are actually controlling energy predictions on the UK national grid. We saw machine learning kind of make its way into biotech, where now there's some pretty major technology companies designing therapeutics and discovering new therapies through machine learning. We saw actually more and more debate around fairness and AI alignment, which is this problem of if superintelligence exists, how do we make sure it doesn't exterminate the species that came before it? And we found that actually very few people are actually working on this topic, given the kind of magnitude of it, and we just pose that out there as is that right or is that wrong? And then the last point is that AI is kind of no longer this figurative arms race. In the research community, I think it was always discussed as such that theoretically it could be used in defense contexts. And last 12 months we've seen a real acceleration in that, and we can probably get into that topic too. So. Thank you.
Cool. So Nathan, so next, Tim, right? Tim from Infineon. Perhaps you could say a little bit about your background and what you're doing there.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. And I didn't know until 2 days ago when Nico Kelling, our head of the AI center, competence center at Infineon, unfortunately fell sick. So I'm happy to stand in. My regards from him to you here in the audience. So what drives us at Infineon? Why are we interested? So we have to keep in mind that every AI algorithm runs on a hardware. So, and this is what we tend to forget. And it also consumes energy. So there's a lot to be gained in efficiency improvement in companies and the whole society. We heard about the grid optimization, what Nathan just mentioned, but it's also with regards to the AI itself. So AI moving to the edge, so back out of the cloud or of the central compute service. So it will move to the edge because of latency reasons, because of data privacy reasons, because of security reasons, and also because of energy efficiency reasons. And we need efficient hardware to do this, and it needs to be secure and safe. So decarbonization without that will not work if we just blew up all the energy in our data centers in the end. So and it comes along, so this time for where it's funny to watch AI doing its mistakes, this is also over. So if you take a picture in the zoo and your nice AI then tags it and puts it in the same folder at home with where the kitten of your grandmother is in, it's funny to laugh about. But if the car eventually crashes because it misinterprets some road signs, or the data AI-based algorithm for the radar signals is doing not its job, then nobody would laugh. So, and this is what drives us, and this is in medical, this is in climate change, so this is in energy distribution everywhere. So it comes from the consumer space now into the industrial space, into B2C, and this is where we, this is what drives us, because these are the strong domains in Europe, and where we can make our points and drive things forward.
Very cool. We'll hear a lot about the interconnection of AI and hardware. I remember, a CEO of an automotive company told me 2 years ago he had never thought about chips, and now he thinks about them every day, right? So now next, Nicole, perhaps tell us a little bit about Merantix and what you are doing in the world.
Yeah,
yes.
So yeah, Merantix, I know Jonas in his keynote said we don't have to hide. We actually per capita have the highest number of AI researchers per capita, more than the US and China combined. And Merantix is asking, basically started at the question, so why don't we have more cool AI commercially successful companies? And that's exactly sort of the problem we're trying to tackle. So Merantix is sort of building companies as a venture studio that have data and AI-driven business models in healthcare, in automotive, and synthetic biology. And me specifically, I founded and I'm leading Merantix Momentum, which is a team that is sort of infusing these business models into existing corporates, SMEs, government agencies, etc. So I think when I think about like 3 points I would like to talk about today is basically talent and the human factor, because that's kind of relevant when we approach industry, infrastructure, and also data and governance. And I always struggle sort of to explain to my family what I do, and I was like, what's a good bridge? And my father is a dentist, so I was like, okay. Essentially, when I go to corporates, I talk about AI, there's often like this fear moment, right? You're like, oh, what if they automate my job away? And I kind of found a bridge to my father, because usually when you go to the dentist, you're also not in such a relaxed state, right? You're kind of like, oh, please don't take out the drill and so on. But I guess the key message here is about dealing with this technology and with this topic before it's too late, before you have a problem. And I think that's what we share, and we really found common topics along this, and so we worked on some dental use cases. He found that great. And I really see a switch there now, because you read it, at least in Germany, in large parts of the European Union, there is actually now a shortage of qualified labor. So now all of a sudden the conversation is a little bit reversed from, oh my God, you're taking away my job, to please build a colleague that I desperately need to still do fulfill vital functions of our business. So I think that's an important shift that we realize, and that has accelerated a little bit the adoption, but that is still a very important part, this human factor. The second factor I want to sort of mirror what you said is infrastructure for us. So for some of the models, and also Jonas is building a large model, we see that we actually are lacking the right infrastructure on different ends. I would say you were talking about the edge. I would even argue on high performance compute clusters. When we look at other regions, I would say Europe is just under like equipped in that area. So you have some research clusters, I don't know, and then Jülich or something, right? There are people who are doing some stuff. But if you really look at it, I mean, Meta alone basically built a huge like high performance compute cluster just for themselves. It's like basically bigger than what we have here in Europe anywhere. So I think that's the second part that we're really an angle that we're very passionate about, that we need to kind of build cool big models that we can then fine tune on the real B2B industrial cases that we want to crack here. And the third topic is, I would say, data, and that ties into governance, because I know when you're from research, you find these great models and everything looks like picture perfect. And you're like, yeah, I have a like nice balanced data set, and I'm training and I'm testing. And then you go into a real company and you're like, oh my God, this looks like a complete spaghetti bowl of data. It sits in different legacy systems, etc. And that's a real challenge, to basically make it happen on the ground, and not just in cases where you can basically pull data off the internet, but the cases that make the German economy strong, right? Deep industry data, etc., Maschinenbau, whatever, the nitty gritty. And so there, I think we need to think about, that's why I mentioned the large models. So how can we find ways to train effective models that can work on ugly small data sets? And I think a second thought on this topic, and then I'm done, I want to leave is we need to think about sharing data effectively, right? And I think that's a real governance question, actually, where I would love to talk. I had like very interesting conversations yesterday. How can we make sure economic participation, privacy concerns, all these things match into each other, that we don't sort of repeat this platform capitalism model and everybody has a feeling somebody else is making money off my data and thus not sharing. So I'll leave it there.
Very cool. Thank you very much, Nicole. So you understand why Nicole is popular explaining I think the dentist analogy I have to remember. So Kizio, who is Helsing and what are you doing and why are you important?
Hi everyone. I also brought some slides I was asked to, so some visuals.
Cool.
So first question to you, who of you has already heard of Helsing? One? Okay, not a couple at least, that's good, but not everyone. So I'm happy to be here and tell you what we do. So first to me, my name is Casey Wong. I'm actually from here. I studied mathematics, data science and management here at Technical University of Munich. During that time, I founded a startup, AI consulting company, built it to over 20 people. And for 4 years, we were helping companies to find and develop innovative AI use cases. But since this year, we actually decided to join Helsing. And we are very happy and proud that we did that. And today, I want to give you a very short introduction what Helsing is about. So Helsing is a new kind of defense and technology company. So as you know, defense is a fundamental capability for governments in order to protect their sovereignty. And we believe that software, and in particular AI, will be the key to that. Our mission is to achieve global technology leadership in real-time information processing, turning unstructured sensor data into information advantage for liberal governments. And I joined Helsing because I think this is one of the best purposes that technology can serve for. We have raised over 100 million euro, which is, I think, the biggest Series A funding for a European startup, not only in the defense industry, but in general. Built a world-class team of over 100 tech-savvy people and AI researchers across 4 offices in Munich, Berlin, London, and Paris. And we are striving for a mission with a very high speed and with a software-centric approach. And this is actually necessary. Why? Because the defense sector is changing dramatically. Compared to nowadays, where the land domain, air domain, maritime domain are operationally pretty separated. All governments in the world are working on digitalizing them, interconnecting them, and also in the midterm there will be manned and unmanned platforms working together, bringing the best of human and machine capabilities together. And this not only results in a huge coordination challenge, but also in a lot of data that needs to be structured, analyzed, interpreted to support the human decision-making in the best way. And that obviously in a highly uncertain, contested, and dynamically changing environment. And in such a world, software and AI will be key. But those AI and software systems have to build the right way. They have to be ethical, following the official rules of engagement and the Council of Europe's ethical guidelines. And especially AI has to be transparent. That means it must be possible for customers to test, understand, and certify them. And also, they need to be purposeful. That means they need to serve the mission of democratically legitimized armed forces. In order to guarantee such high standards, we cannot outsource those developments. We have to do it ourselves here in Europe in order to be independent and sovereign. Last but not least, obviously, we have to achieve this ambitious goal. We want to scale quickly. We want to surpass 200 people until end of the year. And we are looking for people with the hearts in the right place who share our convictions that democratic values are worth protecting for ourselves and our future generations.
Very good. So, I mean, I think it's a perfect introduction, and I guess the current war in Ukraine brings this, you know, this very much in the center also of the public debate, right? I just heard that, you know, because Starlink is now, you know, providing internet connection to Ukraine, you know, there's the next, China is already preparing, you know, how would I take down Starlink if I ever had a conflict like that? So we're getting into tough territory. Okay, before we're getting into these things, I would like to start, you know, before we go overall in the role of Europe, perhaps start what are actually the next development AIs, what are we, you know, preparing for, and then we can say, you know, where are these things actually happening in the world, so we get a little bit of the sense. And I guess, you know, in a certain sense, Nathan, I mean, that's first of all your territory, so perhaps you can start with some ideas, you know, what's next. I mean, you pointed out, if I remember, you know, the last state of AI, most of you heard, you know, what happened, real world applications, AlphaFold 2, etc. No? What's going on now?
Yeah, I mean, these things are very hard to predict. So I would say the kind of key areas are, one, AI in medicine for sure. I think it's still extremely early innings. You know, you would look at traditional biotechs today, or, you know, big pharma companies are worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and, you know, the sum of public companies that make use of machine learning to discover drugs is probably below 20 billion, with the downdraft maybe 10. So it's still, you know, extremely early. It will take another 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 years to see if these drugs are successful. But I think, you know, similar to how kind of old school industries nowadays, you know, new joiners into them kind of go there and see the tools that they have every day and kind of wonder, why is it that we're not using the best in class stuff that we can use on the weekend? And in biotech, it's very much the same. You know, experiments are done very manually. There's, you know, no data lineage, no kind of data quality. There's very little like robotic automation of experiments. Still a lot of human interpretation. So it's not for nothing that a lot of the drugs fail in the clinic, because most of the scientific research can't be reproduced by the company that develops it in the first place. I'd say the other area that's interesting is actually just like general purpose, like cloud computing and machine learning in those environments. You can go a little bit further and start to think, you know, why is it that we don't have more general purpose agents running on our machines that are kind of looking at the tasks that we repeat every day and trying to infer what those tasks are and perhaps try and automate some of those flows. And we've seen very early innings of this with like robotic process automation, like UiPath, etc., which have become very big, but, you know, they're still quite brittle, and you know, as soon as you change one part of the process, the whole kind of system breaks down. But again, with these kind of large language models that Jonas presented, there's, you know, indications that more general purpose systems can be much more robust to any kind of changes in the process itself. So every Mac, you know, has this little tool called Mac Automator, that in theory allows you to automate tasks on a desktop, and I'm pretty sure nobody even knows this exists on their machine because nobody uses it because it's crap. And so I think we can get to a better place. So I'll just leave with those two examples.
Cool. Perhaps I actually asked Nicole next. You know, your company is in the business of identifying the next big thing in AI, right? So perhaps there are some thoughts that you can share that are not totally confidential about what areas you see are, you know, the most important ones going forward.
Yeah, I mean, some of the topics are sitting here also on the panel. So I think those are rather important. I mean, I think you know, in the biotech space or even in the deep industrial space, I think this marriage of sort of soft and hardware, right? Because like when we're looking at, for example, topics like sustainability, we can of course build beautiful software layers, but at the end it's a hardware problem we need to solve because it's about the stuff we put on and we use, etc., and eat. And I think this marriage I see is quite difficult, and that's why I think we will see more developments in that space to kind of be it sustainability or be it like a deep industry production system. And there we're also not really at these super intelligent spots yet, and I think we still have a lot of potential, especially here on the continent. Thinking about opportunities there. We are also looking at healthcare still a lot, especially as we're moving to sort of like rare diseases or completely personalized medicine. I think that's still something that is a long development cycle, so to come. But yeah, your topic is very very interesting and very very topical as well, right? I think another space in general, which is not as exciting, right? But is also just the things we have to do, right? You were talking about task mining and sort of regulatory compliance space or something. That's a sector just is growing structurally in the whole economy. I think if we can automate that away, I think everybody would be very happy.
Very cool. So I heard lots of biotech foundation models, hardware, software integration, industrial defense. So either do you agree, and where will these things happen, right? You have quite an international experience. What do you think where these core innovations happen and why?
I think what we already have heard yesterday is very important as the transfer of knowledge and technology from academia into the industries. And I agree that we as Germany or Europe, we have amazing talents and you know, people who are very smart, very engaged, visionary, and we need to create the ecosystems that they can grow into. Because what I see a lot is, especially in AI, there are so many smart researchers, and so little is being delivered or applied in the real world. So we don't maybe we don't have a lack of AI researchers. Maybe we have a lack of AI engineers or MLOps engineers, and so this is an education topic on the technical side, and on the other side, it's I think a big. We do have a lot of big issues, right, next to energy and war and climate and health. A lot of those things needs innovation, and I think one of the biggest opportunity costs that we have is that we don't leverage the young and bright minds enough, who might have good ideas, who might have passions to solve those problems. And this is education not only on the tech side, but also on the entrepreneurial side. And I think at least here in Munich with the Unternehmertum, they're doing a pretty good job. But I think this has to be done much more across whole Europe.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for mentioning, you know, Unternehmertum, we try hard. By the way, I would like someone to prepare a mic, because I will let the audience obviously jump in at one point in time. But I would still, you know, continue on these questions, you know, in terms of perhaps be a bit more provocative. I was in China in 2019 AI Worldwide AI Conference, and they showed a pie chart, you know, distribution of the world, and it was China and the US. There was nothing else on the map. right? Just nothing. And then in industrial, there was a sliver of Europe. Is that true? Is that where it's happening?
Maybe. At least it's in the yeah. At least it's in the consumer space. And you see if there's a big plan and also a huge, let's say, acceptance on the societal level, then the progress is fast. And this we must not lose here in Europe or in Germany. So I think we have three major bottlenecks. One is talents, talents, and not only talents, but turn these talents into experienced people, turn them into engineers, not only into data scientists, but engineers working in the domains like Maschinenbau, so this dry German word, or electrical engineering, stuff like this, and not only working on algorithm, but applying this and taking the step from the university, from the academic research into industry via startup, but also, and this is very cumbersome and very lengthy process in Europe compared to other areas in the world. So why has anybody let them spend 3 years of their time to deal with all this regulation stuff and so on? Instead, they can move over to somewhere to the UK and be faster. So we have to do something here. And the next bottleneck, I think, is data. So access to data and usage of data. And if we go into the commercial domains, there's always the let's say shyness, or let's say a reluctantness to share data across organizational boundaries, across industries. Partly also because there's antitrust legislation, which is quite a strict barrier, and if you are concerned, you don't do this. So it's very fragmented, but you need huge amount of data in order to have a learning system. And how do you do this? So small, medium enterprises, how can they share data without giving up their USP, let's say? And the next thing is money, yes. So we are putting in money here in Germany and in the UK. It's more, it's more than even partly in the rest of Europe. So, and if we don't have that seed money, and be it, let's say, public spending plus private investors, it will not catch up and do not gain the self-momentum and critical mass to make it into the industry domains. So these are the three bottlenecks I see. And there are measures taken, and I'd say probably half-heartedly, not with the full conviction it takes to be successful in here.
Very cool. I like the panel. They're really jumping into actions, right? I still want to challenge the fact. Just to think, because everyone thinks, well, China and the US is where it's happened. But in Europe, first of all, we heard, your number, there are more AI talents. I think it was a German number per capita than in the US. And people think of Europe always, France, Germany, and so on. But there is Estonia, there is Finland. I would still count the UK. I mean, you might, DeepMind is a European company. It might be owned by Alphabet, but it is very much so in Europe. You might even count Israel in the periphery. So is it true that there's so little happening here? Nathan, you must. You do this all the time, no? You're checking it?
I think the brutal truth is still like the most ambitious European technology entrepreneurs, if they can, they will go to the US. And if they can, they will probably sell their products in the US. And I think the reason is a fewfold. Like, one is that American companies are just more attuned and more risk-taking to buying products from untested companies. I personally think it's because a lot of US companies have grown up in the same sort of ecosystem. They understand that buying something from a small player today doesn't mean they're going to be a small player in the future. Whereas when you sell to European customers, a lot of these businesses have, for good reason, been slogging for many years to build something big through family money, through bank loans, not through venture funds. And so when they look at a small company, they're like, I want to have exclusive access to this. I want, whatever, like exclusivity for 3 years. I want this thing to be downloadable on my computer. I don't want to use the cloud, like all this stuff. And the procurement is so painful. And this has actually been proven in numbers where, a US venture firm looked at the fastest growing SaaS companies by HQ in the US or Europe, and they found that the ones in Europe that were growing the fastest had like 80% of their customer base in the US. and the ones that were growing the slowest at 80% of the customer base in Europe, broadly speaking. So I think it's pretty night and day in that sense. Maybe it's a bit different for consumer because a lot of local nuances. On the talent piece, like I think the thing that's most important is role models, because yes, we do have very, very talented people here, but if they don't look around themselves, look around their environment and see people that they can aspire to, it's very hard for them to see the path to get there. And a lot of the kind of icons in technology are American. If they are European, they've oftentimes built their company in the US afterwards. We do have a few really amazing ones. You know, Daniel Ek is one of them, but there's not, you know, as many of them as there are in the US. And so this kind of role model and showing the path is like super important. And I guess like the last thing, and I got a little bit like, I don't know, poked out on Twitter for saying it the other day, but it was just this reflection of some of the investor kind of approach in Europe, where even at Series A, a lot of European investors will, you know, ask companies for like, you know, very deep diligence on their financial plan, like understanding how they're gonna, you know, take paid marketing spend and understand which channel is going to work and the customer acquisition costs and all this stuff. Whereas the mentality generally in the US for an American investor is, you know, what's it going to take for you to just crush everybody else in the market and build a #1 player? I think if you pose this to any European entrepreneur and ask them which kind of mentality of investor they would like to work with, you know, 99% of the time it's the second one, it's not the first. So I think those are some of the issues. Yeah, I mean, I can go into more if you'd like, but that's
cool.
That's
So you say it is true, primarily because the US, China might be another one. Now, you know, one of the topics here is sovereignty. You know, people always say it's important for European sovereignty. If I would ask someone in the street right now what's most important for European sovereignty, they would say gas, energy, right? Not AI, yeah, unprompted. Tim, any opinions?
Yeah, this is since 24th of February. You get that answer. Probably you got another one before, and you will in 2 years you will get another one still. So I think we need to have or to maintain this room for maneuver and to steer also industry and society along our ethical values. We heard that, and if we lose that ability because we can only buy a black box, be it as a company or as a society in whole, or being left behind, let's say doing fax paper, you know, we saw that in the pandemic, that we have to invest also in this type of underlying infrastructure. If we don't do this, we have to pay for that later. And we see this today in the energy infrastructure, which we have neglected. So we have to now invest a lot and to catch up, yeah. And we are. If you want to catch up, it's easy if the one in front of you is standing still, but the others are running as well. Yeah? So this we have to keep in mind. And I think sovereignty. Nobody. It's not autonomy in the sense that I can do everything on my own, but I need to have a hand of cards which is valuable enough so that others cannot be successful without me, and I cannot be successful without them. So we have something to trade, and I think that's what it's all about. And it needs to be on eye level. And if we are, let's say, in position number 5, we have to take quantum computing, for example. So this is something which will be also a battlefield in the future. So this will also come up. Will the majority of the citizens in Germany care today? If you ask them in the street, probably not. Maybe it will change in 25 years let's say, if data security depends and is out of our hands. Yeah. So I'd say we need also some kind of collective wisdom to not get irritated too much, and you cannot change these type of priority every second day.
So I take that as a yes, AI is important for sovereignty.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. If you look what you can achieve as efficiency gains within companies, for example, because spending less gas probably because you have a better better regulation of energy consuming processes in the steel industry or at semiconductors, for example, semiconductor industry. If you don't have that, if you don't have access to that, okay, you have to spend more, which means a competitive disadvantage. So for Infineon alone, this would contribute to, if you can do this calculation, probably $1 billion in a few years, either if we don't use that technology or if we don't sell products which serve this technology. So we would lose $1 billion. So
Cool.
another company in another region of the world would not lose that. So we have a disadvantage. Yeah. So we simply cannot afford having such a kind of disadvantage.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is why it's mission critical.
Let me be even a bit more provocative. Whenever I talk with European regulators who try to regulate AI, I also tell them, frankly, a digital colony has no say. Right? If you're not a player in AI, you have no say on the development. Would you agree? Is it important to have a say? Or
So I would argue yes. So there's actually a book. It's called The Brussels Effect, and it's basically like saying as a professor from I think Columbia University, and it's basically about at the moment still we have a say because our regulatory system, like the GDPR, for example, is a standard that has been set. And so if you want to access, we have a say because we're an interesting market as consumers, essentially. Still, exactly, still. So and so that's why by creating regulations, we still have a say, and we sort of also have an impact in other regions. GDPR is being adopted as a kind of minimum standard. So if you want to access Europe, and then maybe it's more efficient to do this on a global minimum standard. But yeah, I would say, I mean, I would like to move away just from sort of the regulatory perspective and thinking, hey, how can we protect our consumer market and also like maybe healthcare data and all these kind of things too, okay, but we want to be the creators also of these things and thereby have a say, right? Have like still a lot of, and I think to your point, we still need to keep a lot of the value add here to still have a say in 50 years, right? Because then per capita GDP might look different, globally distributed. And so I would say, yes, it's absolutely, it's crucial for the regulator to understand this, yes, there is a risk angle to this, where we want to protect consumers, and I'm totally with this on ethics, etc. But like, you still have to like play offense as well.
Cool.
and pretty strong offense, please, because we're catching up.
Cool. Yeah, Keith, I guess your company is built on the hypothesis, no? That's important.
Yeah, but I would like to add to the previous point that I think AI is important and be sovereign there, not just because it's good for efficiency. Of course, efficiency is good. We have a huge population, growing population, and limited resources, trying to be more sustainable with it. So efficiency is good, but it's not just about efficiency. It's about effectiveness too, making superhuman level decisions, and that we also saw before. Example in Go can be applied to many things, and I don't mean just military, but just improving the human capability in decision making is I think a immensely important capability, and agility, which is again something important. What was already mentioned a little bit is that we have to be able to adapt quickly in a new crisis, because we don't know what the next pandemic will be or the next war will be. So technology is enabling to become, and especially machine learning, hence learning, right? It helps us to be more agile and faster, and that's, I think, the reason why AI is so important. But it is a group effort. It's not just about AI. It's a multidimensional problem, and being sovereign in AI is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient one. We also have to be not too dependent in terms of energy, resources, economically, right? So yeah, that's the tough thing.
Cool. Now, there's always very quickly a cry what the state or the European Union should do. But there are lots of players, right? We have state regulation, we have education universities, we have established companies, private individuals, both on the investor side and the philanthropy side. We have startups. So who has to act and what should they do? Anyone who wants to go first with strong opinions about that.
So I have very strong opinions. Let me just limit myself to a few points. I think On the state side, I would like to see, to your point, to also for governance and more capital and building better infrastructure. I think we can sort of unleash pension funds to sort of start spending a small allocation, and we will immediately see a huge influx into growth capital in Europe, which will also solve some of the governance issues, because at the end it kind of matters from a sovereignty point of view who is also the shareholder of the company, even if the headquarters is here. So I would like to very much see that instead of encouraging us to put everything into state bonds, government bonds. I think from a startup and talent perspective is just to be more daring and to actually encourage people and build ecosystems, also pay it forward and kind of spend time with people who have ideas and encourage them and say, hey, you can be a founder, just do it. You know, I will support you as well, because that's what's happening in the US, that you have just starting even with the angel investors. A lot of the successful entrepreneurs are just putting their money basically in new ideas and kind of understand this idea. So that's something we are also trying to do. And then on the corporate side, yeah, I mean, be a little bit daring. Dare, always dare. You have this like university game, no Wahrheit oder Pflicht, so dare, like this party game, just dare. Do it, because it will, if you do not start doing it, it will just be too late, and you will be the dinosaur dying, and nobody will talk to you anymore.
Same line. So better start doing first than waiting for others to do the first move. I think this is important. Of course, we can complain a lot about EU regulations and how long will it take, and is the AI Act the right move, and so on. We can debate for 5 years, and I have my opinion also on whether this will is the right move, and so on. So on the other hand, if the company don't dare, and this runs down to individuals in the company, let's say, give it a try. Yeah, let's start, rather than, so it's a kind of reversal of proof. So this is what we try to establish also within Infineon. Before, let's say, someone comes up with an idea and says, okay, we do AI-based circuit optimization, for example, to put a very tiny example in. Which also means a new tool, taking that from a company which is not known in the industry space. Okay, so if I ask that person, can you prove that this will be better than the previous the solution we have in place right now? Most likely the answer will be not. No, cannot prove because I haven't tried. Yeah? So, and I say, okay, then you collect data, you collect references, whatever. So, and this means a year or so over. Yeah. So the reversal of proof would be, I'd say, if I can prove you already now that this is not going to work, probably because I have experience, I have already tried last week the same stuff. Yeah. Then we stop it. Otherwise, we give it a try. Mm-hmm. So, and I think this is so the other way, we wait for a long time, and then we have a sense of urgency, which is urgency because we are lagging behind. So we should have a sense of, instead of urgency, a sense of ambition, yeah? To be upfront and not waiting to fall behind and then catch up. So this is, I think, that's a mentality topic.
Well, I mean, of course, a bit opinionated. Thank you very much, because I run the two venture labs. But I mean, think of biotech, right? A healthcare sector. 50% of the market is the US. Europe is ridiculously regulated. There's no capital in Europe. They still made it, right? And frankly, I mean, you know, to your point, couldn't it be an advantage? Because in the early stages, they also collaborated extremely well against China. Unfortunately, the Chinese government then did come in against it, but in the initial stages, it was a great collaboration globally. So couldn't it also, I mean, you can serve global markets. Couldn't it also be an advantage to be here, Nathan, too? Because you said so strongly, you know, there's only the US. You can serve the US market from everywhere, but you can still, there's the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, I think you can. And that's probably the counterexample of, like, there needs to be some kind of neutral party in the middle or something that can mediate between China and the US. Yeah, it could be.
Okay. Not convinced.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like some investable theme. Why not?
I like to switch a little bit then, perhaps, because there's also AI and other topics. And I always find it very interesting, you know, if two fields come together, you know, do both fields think they fit, or does only one part of it? No? So let's start with quantum computing. if we have quantum computing here, as you might know, I worked a lot in quantum computing. If you ask quantum computing, what are the applications? They say it's chemicals and AI. If I have AI guys, what's the most important development? Quantum computing comes somewhere at the bottom of the list. So is quantum computing relevant for you? Have you thought about it? Or do you tell these guys you're just smoking? Anyone ever thought about quantum computing? Infineon must have thought about quantum computing.
Yeah, of course, because we are working with companies like IQM, for example. So because we share also a technology base, it's similar. It's similar. So whether you produce ion traps or superconducting circuits and so on, these rely on abilities which are very close to conventional semiconductor manufacturing already. So this is one thing. The other one is also the application. So it offers a lot of potential. But I'd say it's not either or. So you wait, it's AI or quantum computing, or even worse, quantum computing will replace AI. So I think this is nonsense. Yeah. So it will offer additional potential. It will offer additional possibilities, capabilities. It will unlock capabilities which are simply not accessible today. So this will make a difference. But like AI is not a kind of magic potion. You just throw AI on a problem you have today, and you get a solution. So this is not the case. You need wise, experienced people to take the right measures for the appropriate measures for the problem you want to solve.
So I guess I take that as quantum computing is somewhat important for AI.
It will, like I said, it will offer additional new opportunities which you simply cannot think about today. Yeah, and we will see what that will be. First ideas are there.
Okay, Keith, you must think about quantum, right?
Yes, but I'm by far no expert, right? But I think that quantum computers are obviously much more capable in processing specific kind of stuff much faster. They have like a probabilistic foundation, and that is, in theory, like suits AI very well, because AI uses binary operations to simulate probabilistic stuff. But I think one reason why AI and from an AI perspective, quantum computing is not the top priority is because it would help to make AI training more efficient, and it's in the end a cost reduction or time saving thing. But this is, I think, at our current stage, not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is on the one side data, good quality data. All of those world models that you saw was built with data from the internet. And what I think the next level of AI is not exactly as it has been told. It's not copying the behavior of the human. It's about thinking one step ahead, what could be done, what should be done. And this, it's not trained by usual supervised learning approaches or self-supervised learning approaches. It's trained by reinforcement learning approaches, letting an AI live in an environment, try out things, and learn for himself. And this is why my hypothesis, what would be even more important in quantum computing, is the metaverse. Why? Because this is the digitalization of the real world, and this provides the simulation environment for AI to interact with not just Go games, but with real stuff. And this could again provide opportunities that we cannot foresee.
Cool. So later, if people in quantum computing say AI is our core application, it's challenge them. But I still think they are for other reasons. But anyways, so the other thing, there are other fields where it's the other way around. Climate action. Whenever I ask people who work in AI, they say we can do so many things. We'll solve the climate problem. Essentially, I actually worked on the climate problem, and once in the climate path for Germany, I had an industrial audience, and we said, what could the government do? And I said, oh, we should invest in AI. They stared at me as if I had said, you would drill for oil in the Antarctica. They just said, why AI? So was I just silly? They said, well, Philip, but what would you have answered? Was it just, so apologies, was a stupid idea, AI has nothing to do with it? Or can we do something real?
No, I would totally agree. So I think, I mean, I said, right, there's a software layer, and then at the end it's a hardware problem, but synthetic biology, so building sustainable materials, AI is super powerful. So this design of experiment setup to understand how can we actually combine, how can we synthesize new materials, this will mean a massive speed up in basically understanding how we can synthesize more sustainable materials, I think. Yes, clear yes. Yeah, then I mentioned compliance. I don't think that's the most important thing, because that's kind of like Arbeitsbeschaffung. We're creating compliance, then we can automate complying, which is good. But that's one aspect. And I think, for example, when we look at like even understanding like the lifespan of battery, right? Batteries or recycling, even there are components where you need AI to understand basically the lifespan of the battery in an n-dimensional space and simulate what are actually the properties after 1,000, 10,000 loading stacks. So I think very much there's a lot we can do.
So what I hear is accelerating research and modeling. Would that be roughly correct?
Yeah, but I mean, even that means building stuff.
Yeah,
so for example, we're building a
agree.
company now that has a wet lab, and that's synthesizing.
Totally agree. Just what to say about any other ideas?
Yes, it starts with data. So where if you look into models for climate change or for weather, local weather phenomena, for example, there's a huge lack of data still. Yeah, so we saw that a year ago in the Ahrtal, where nobody could predict this, because the weather models only had one point in the mesh there. Yeah, so that's something which we have to improve. So gather more data, have more sensing, use more information, which is mostly already available. Yeah? So and put this into models, and you could also have this for chemistry optimization for the electrolytes in the battery, for example. So we are at the starting point here, and there's a lot of potential. And if not everything you can calculate today using deterministic models. So you have to look for patterns in the data, because this is multidimensional. It's dynamic. It's not static. It goes over lifetime, over different charging states, for example, if you look into batteries, and simply we don't have any clue today how to optimize this. This is still trial and error, and I repeat, even though it's neither efficient nor effective, right?
True.
So this is the problem.
True. Technically, that doesn't prevent climate change, but enables us to manage the unavoidable climate action state.
If we are not willing to do less, completely less, so if, let's say, not coming here and sitting here, but let's say only watching this from remote, then we have to achieve the same with much less. Otherwise, it will not work out. Cool. Yeah? So so that means we have to cut energy consumption not by half or by 20%, but by 90%. So we have to, and this is possible. Yeah. So we are living in the paradise of wasteland. So this is the status today.
I would have lots of challenging questions for you, but I would like to open it up to the audience. Now, one quick question is: do we have a mic? That would be great. Any questions from the audience to this, unique panel? I see here the first. Perhaps you could say quickly your name and who you are. That always helps a lot as context, and then ask your question.
I hope it works. Yes.
Yes.
So my name is Akko Shebany. I'm prototyper at Freudenberg. We are creating heavy load fuel cell systems, and I'm head of the guys who are building up those systems, even for big ships or even for bus and truck systems. And the question to you is, what is your turn to change climate change? You can start how you want, and I guess we have time for 1 minute.
Let me just paraphrase the question and say, what do you do in your company for climate change? Is that...
Well, I guess personally, because I changed from Kraft- und Arbeitsmaschinen directly to the new field of fuel cells, because I guessed, okay, I have to do something which gives an impact to the other people, and I want to give my knowledge to other people, even to the developing engineers here in Munich, and I'm giving lessons learned workshops for them.
Okay, so what do you do for climate change, Lee?
Like definitely looking for companies to invest into, and then I don't know, I do everything online like for 5 years.
Cool.
I don't travel too much anymore.
Anyone else who wants to take the
I
question?
can say I work for Infineon, so
Yeah.
and this is our products which we deliver, like for example for the power inverters for fridges or whatever. They save over their lifetime 25 of what we consume in order to produce them. Yeah?
Okay.
So and this is what I mean with driving down the consumption to achieve the same or even better levels that we have today.
So personally, I don't know, I've been a vegetarian, I would say, for 20 years, so trying to cut down on my personal level, but also as an investor mainly, right? So personally, as an angel investor, investing in companies that drive the change, and then also in Merantix, we have we do all these things that I was talking about, so synthetic biology, creating new materials, ESG reporting, these sort of topics. We're trying to build companies that can solve these topics.
Yeah, tough question to be put on the spot, but like personally, I think what I'm also a little bit proud of is I actually don't own a car. I never have. I probably never will. I do a lot with public transit, which is not the ideal thing here, and if you live a little bit outside of Munich, so I rather take the 1 hour bus drive than the 20 minutes car thing. But it's so. Yeah, it's not always easy, but I think we come into a stage where not everyone needs a car, and this is probably a very big saver.
Let me also answer that, because this question is dear to my heart. What I do, we in the sustainability lab, we try to enable young people to build scalable business models in green tech sustainability, because I always tell the social entrepreneurs, becoming vegan or becoming social doesn't have an impact yet, right? I mean, you have to build a scalable model. Elon Musk did more for electric cars than all the people commenting on or regulating, General Motors. Anyways, you had a question here, right? Yeah. Please.
Hi, I'm Thomas from Altair, and I help build hardware infrastructure for companies doing AI. So cool. My question would be, whenever I work with companies, even big billion-dollar companies, there's a lot of hesitation to invest in AI infrastructure. There's a lot of hesitation to build their own data centers. And that seems to stop progress in a way, because the data scientists, they always have to kind of find a reason why they need these cloud hours and everything like that. So what's your opinion on building your own infrastructure? What's your opinion on HPC in Germany or Europe?
So I guess, Tim, you're the largest company around, and then Nicole, who tries to do the same thing with companies. No?
In fact, we have our own data centers, and they are growing like data centers are. So we are also continuously investing in building that up, including not only data centers but also compute clusters. So we do this because also for sensitivity reasons, for example, we do government IDs. We cannot do this. We have to do this on premise. So we are building that up. So what we are struggling with still, and this is what I mentioned already, is how to do exchange of data with other companies in a protected framework without breaching, for example, compliance laws. So this is still a barrier. But repeat. So we are investing heavily.
Cool.
That's great, and maybe to add to that, because we're basically telling everybody they should do this. I know we also work together, but so we're telling the government, we're telling big entrepreneurship centers, we're telling startups, basically everybody, we need the infrastructure. And I think one point, maybe just to emphasize it, is the use case thing, right? So you need obviously to show a business model, because it's hard to tell somebody, hey, invest 1 billion in like what they think is like a big computer, and then you need to show the business model, and for that you need the data, because you don't want to buy infrastructure, it stands there and it sits idle, right? That's breaking every machine learning engineer's heart and also not capital efficient. So then the software layer becomes important, and for that we have to be ready and have also then significant data sets that create that business value.
And people who understand that.
Yeah. Excellent. We had another question up there, I guess.
Hi, everybody. So first of all, thanks a lot for the valuable insights. I really enjoyed it so far. I'm Bobby from Infineon, just like Tim. I'm also a very strong proponent for AI, but I will try to play like the devil's advocate a little bit and be provocative and maybe try to get us outside our echo chamber a little bit, because we have a few personalities like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Stephen Hawking who were very precautious about AI, and even maybe the German society, right, which is a little bit traditional, you know, and they're trying to they're a little bit scared, you know, to take these quick steps towards AI. So what I would like to pick your heads a little bit, you know, Nathan, Tim, Nicole, and Kizio, and maybe Philip as well, to pick your heads a little bit from the other perspective, you know, what speaks against AI, and then maybe finish up with your solution against this issue.
Very good. Can I just add to that, because not everyone might have been present yesterday. You said one of your big hopes was AGI, right? So, and some people were hesitant about whether that was their big hope. Perhaps, you know, that's, I guess, so you have to go first here. What's the biggest danger, and how do we solve that?
I think the biggest one is just like you don't actually need machine learning to solve a lot of problems. Like, and I think the biggest danger is just throwing a lot of money to build a complex solution when a simpler one works fine.
I think it's on us here, so to kind of demystify AI. So AI is seen as a black box, and black box might be a threat, but honestly, which technical device which you are using today isn't a black box to most of us. So be it a smartphone or a company, a car or whatever. So and it's on us to explain that. So it's no mystery. Yeah? It's no mystery. It's no devil inside. So it's AI. So nothing to be afraid of. Yeah.
Let's be short. Sorry, because
yeah. As per my simile, right? Not going to the dentist will not make your teeth better. So I think we need to shape it, and just because you have concerns doesn't mean you should stop doing it, because then the people you don't want maybe for to shape, as we see in the conflict in Ukraine, will shape it. I'm not sure that's better.
That's my point. So basically, you have to think ahead and be very clear on that, and this is why money, like we shouldn't only invest into AI development on technologically, but also investigate the ethical and moral side and what we want it to be used for and what not, and how can we ensure that it's not been misused. I think this is the biggest question, especially in my domain.
Very cool. I'll be happy to take your question in person, because we're running out of time here. So I would like to thank this distinguished audience. I think they deserve a great applause. Thank you very much. Yeah.